Okay, so get this. What if we told you that a 19th century governess's story, like, totally mirrored the teachings of a being from another dimension? Sounds kind of crazy, right? But that's what we're looking at today. We're diving deep, thanks to you, our learner. You sent in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre classic, right? And paired it with, get this, the first 5 books of The Law of One. So, big question here. Could Jane's search for, love and belonging actually line up with some of these, like, universal truths from Ra?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like how these personal stories can maybe show us something bigger about, well, reality itself. I mean, are we looking at a human life mirroring cosmic patterns? Whoa.
Right. It's a lot to unpack, but first, Jane Eyre. Just a quick recap, it's this Victorian novel that follows Jane, from her rough childhood to her struggles to find love, independence, and her own identity. We see that early trauma, right? In the Red Room, where she feels totally out of place at Gateshead.
Yeah, she calls herself an interloper, not part of the family, not connected.
Hmm.
That feeling of being an outsider, I think that really sets the stage for her whole journey.
It's rough. And then she gets sent off to Lowwood School. I mean, talk about harsh conditions, injustice. Remember Helen Burns being punished unfairly? And Mr. Brocklehurst, talk about a hypocrite, right? But there are some good moments too, like with Bessie and Miss Temple. And Helen Burns, she's amazing. So resilient and intelligent, even in that awful place.
Exactly. Like even there, Jane finds strength from others, especially Helen. She says it's as if a martyr, a hero, had passed a slave or victim and imparted strength in the transit.
Powerful, right? Seeing that inner strength in the face of, like, total oppression.
Totally. So fast forward, she lands at Thornfield Hall as a governess. New chapter, new people, Mrs. Fairfax, her pupil Adele, and then, of course, Mr. Rochester, right?
Huh.
And their connection, it just builds. All that witty banter, and you can just feel the attraction growing. Yeah, it's not your typical romance. It's deeper than that,
Yeah.
like they're intellectual equal.
Yeah.
But there's also all this mystery, right? Blanche Ingram shows up as a potential love interest for Rochester, and then there are these weird events happening at Thornfield.
Yeah, that creepy laughter, the hidden room, it's all very gothic and suspenseful. And then, bam, the wedding gets interrupted by Mr. Mason, and we find out about Bertha Mason. Poor Jane. Her world just implodes.
Right, this huge secret comes out and, well, it changes everything. And Jane has to make this impossible choice. And it sends her back to being alone again.
Totally. She leaves Thornfield and ends up basically destitute before finding shelter with the Rivers family. And then there's St. John Rivers, who wants to marry her. But it's all about duty and his missionary work, not exactly the love connection Jane is looking for.
It's another kind of trap for her, right? Like obligation versus her own heart. It shows just how much she longs for a relationship that's based on, like, true equality and love, not just doing the right thing.
And finally, after all that, she returns to Thornfield. But it's different now. And Rochester has changed too.
Right. Thornfield is rebuilt, and their relationship is, well, more balanced now. It feels like after all those struggles, she finally found where she belongs. It's like a homecoming.
Okay, so that's Jane Eyre in a nutshell. Now, on to something completely different, The Law of One. It's basically a series of channeled conversations with an entity called Ra. Ra claims to be, get this, a sixth density social memory complex. Basically, a super advanced group consciousness from, like, another dimension.
It gets deep, for sure. And the core message is pretty simple and profound. All is one, all is the creator. This idea of unity, it really permeates the whole thing.
Right, and there are all these fascinating concepts like densities of consciousness. We're in third density, which is where we develop self-awareness. And then there's the concept of free will, which is super important. It's actually the first distortion of the law of one. We also learn about spiritual evolution through reincarnation and, well, learning from our experiences.
Densities are a big deal in the law of one. Third density is like this crucial stage where we as souls really wrestle with, you know, duality choice, good and evil. It's all about figuring out who we are.
Exactly. And then there's the idea of harvest, where we can move to higher densities based on our spiritual progress. Ra also talks about these two polarities, service to others and service to self. They're like the main paths for our evolution. Oh, and there are these beings called wanderers. They're from higher densities, and they come here to help humanity wake up, basically.
Yeah, like helping us to evolve and move towards the light. The choice between serving others or serving yourself, it's like the driving force behind spiritual evolution according to the law of one. And wanderers, they're like embodying service to others.
So cool. There's also this stuff about the Confederation and the Orion groups. They're kind of like opposing forces influencing Earth. And then there are discussions on chakras, crystals, psychic attacks, and the idea that our higher selves exist outside of linear time. Oh, and we can't forget about the veiling of consciousness, which is why we don't remember past lives and stuff.
That veiling is a big deal, you know. It's like a kind of amnesia that's necessary for us to have genuine free will in third density. Otherwise, we'd just be following a script, right? It's all about discovering ourselves and making choices, even if we don't fully remember who we are or where we come from.
Makes sense. And finally, Ray talks about archetypes of the mind, even mentioning the tarot as a system based on these archetypes. Trippy, right?
Totally. Archetypes, they're like these fundamental patterns in our psyche, you know? They help us to make sense of the world, to understand our experiences, and to deal with the challenges of being human.
So we've got these two very different sources, and our mission today, thanks to our learner, is to see if we can find any connections between Jane's journey and what the Law of One tells us about, well, the universe.
Sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, isolation and the need for connection. It's a huge theme in Jane Eyre, right? She feels like an outsider from the very beginning. Interloper, not of her race, and unconnected with her, she says. And even after leaving Thornfield, she describes herself as a wanderer on the face of the earth, always feeling repelled by the consciousness of having no claim to ask. She's just so alone for so long.
Yeah, and she craves connection, even with Bessie. You know, that small bit of kindness. She wished most intensely that she would always be so pleasant and amiable. But with Mr. Rochester, it's different. She says his presence in a room was more cheering than the brightest fire, and calls him, "My equal is here, and my likeness." It's like she's found her missing piece.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, right? Like the Law of One says, you and your creator are one, and you are one with all of his parts. So is Jane's struggle just a personal story, or is it reflecting this deeper truth, this need for connection? Could it be like a soul memory of that original unity?
It's possible, right? Like maybe we're all wired for connection because deep down we know we're not really separate. Jane's story could be like a microcosmic example of this universal longing for unity. And the way she finds that connection with Rochester based on equality, that might even be a way of like experiencing that unity on a human level.
Deep stuff. Okay, next point. Suffering and finding inner strength. Jane goes through a lot, both physically and emotionally. But what's interesting is how she keeps going. Even early on, she says, "There is a thought that for strength should avail me, heaven is a home." And later, she develops a firmer trust in myself and my own powers and less withering dread of oppression. She doesn't let hardship break her.
Right, and seeing Helen Burns' strength gives her strength too. It was as if a martyr, a hero, had passed a slave or victim and imparted strength in the transit. Like resilience can be contagious, even in the worst situations.
So powerful. Now, the Law of One talks about third density as a place where we learn through distortions and challenges. Ross says catalyst yields experience. However, through free will and the faculty of imperfect memory, catalyst is most often only partially used, and the experience thus correspondingly skewed.
So basically, we're given these challenges, these catalysts to help us grow. But because of free will and our like limited memory, we don't always learn the lesson the first time around.
And there's that mention of entities from Maldek working their understanding complexes through a series of what you would call karmic restitutions. So maybe that's what Jane's doing, right? Processing this difficult stuff,
Right.
learning to be self-reliant and resilient. It's all part of her like soul evolution.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel. The Law of One emphasizes growth through challenges, and Jane's story definitely shows that process. Maybe it's not about avoiding hardship, but about like learning from it and coming out stronger on the other side.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the search for truth, understanding, and finding home. Jane is a curious person, always wanting to learn. She wants to understand Rochester and all the mysteries at Thornfield. And in the end, when she's reunited with him, she says, "My journey is closed." It's like she's finally found where she belongs.
Yeah, she's always searching, always trying to make sense of things. And that final line, it's so powerful. It's not just about finding a physical home, but about finding peace and belonging in herself and in her relationship.
And the Law of One talks about how the Confederation offers understanding to those who seek. Understanding is like the goal of meditation and study, right? And wanderers are here to help us in that seeking. It's also interesting that Ross says it is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density.
It's like acknowledging what we don't know is the first step to really understanding. And that ties in with Jane's journey, too. She's constantly questioning, observing, trying to figure things out. Maybe that's what it means to be on a spiritual path. To keep seeking, to keep learning, to keep an open mind.
It's deep, for sure. Okay, let's talk about choice and free will. Jane makes so many big decisions throughout the story. She chooses not to give in to despair. She chooses to leave Thornfield even though she loves Rochester. She chooses to say no to St. John's proposal. And she chooses to go back to Rochester in the end. She's the one driving her own story.
Totally. Her choices, they shape everything.
Mm.
She's not just letting things happen to her, she's making conscious decisions based on her values and what she believes in, even when it's hard.
And the Law of One is very clear about the importance of free will. The choice is made in this third density and is the axis upon which the creation turns, Ross says, and the higher self always respects free will, no meddling allowed.
Which is like super empowering, right? It means we're in charge of our own destinies.
Hmm.
And Jane's story is a great example of that. It shows how our choices have consequences and how those choices ultimately can lead us to where we're meant to be.
It's amazing. Okay, last big point. Love and relationships. We see how Jane and Rochester's relationship evolves. It's not just about physical attraction. It's about equality, companionship, intellectual connection. And she says, my equal is here and my likeness. That's powerful, especially compared to Blanche Ingram, who's all about appearances, or St. John, who offers a loveless marriage based on duty.
Yeah, Jane wants a real partnership, someone who sees her, who values her for who she is, not just her social status or her usefulness. And that's what she finds with Rochester eventually.
And the Law of One describes love as a second distortion of the Law of One, like it's the fundamental desire of the creator. It also talks about energy transfer between people based on polarity. And it says that fifth density is about light or wisdom, and sixth density is about unity or love.
It's like love is this driving force in the universe. And the way we experience it here in third density is just one expression of that. Maybe Jane and Rochester's relationship is showing us something about that deeper kind of love, a love that's based on like a true meeting of souls, an energetic connection that goes beyond the physical.
It's definitely something to think about. Now, last but not least, let's talk about those subtle influences and other realms. We've got Jane's experience in the Red Room, where she thinks she sees Mr. Reed's spirit, and then all the weird stuff at Thornfield, the laughter, Grace Pool, all that. It's like there are forces at work that we can't fully explain.
Yeah, it adds this spooky element to the story. Like there's more going on than meets the eye. And it makes you wonder, what else is out there? What other realms or dimensions are interacting with our own?
And the Law of One talks about the Confederation and the Orion groups and how they're influencing things on Earth. It also mentions psychic attacks and stuff like that. So maybe Jane's experiences are just like a personal level version of those larger cosmic interactions.
It's an interesting thought. Maybe we're all influenced by energies and forces that we're not fully aware of. Jane's story, even though it's fiction, could be a way of exploring that idea in a more grounded, human way.
Right. Okay, so we've covered a lot today. We've looked at Jane Eyre and the Law of One, and we've found some pretty amazing connections, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing how a classic novel can, like, unintentionally reflect these deeper truths about the universe and the human experience.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe there's more to these stories than we realize. So, to our learner, thank you for sending in these sources. We encourage you to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and to keep making those connections.
Yeah, keep that curiosity alive.
Yeah.
And remember, the journey of understanding is never truly over.
Well said. Until next time, keep diving deep.